before today's event, I never knew what you call 30 years celebration. So I therefore had to do a search and discovered that the 30th anniversary of any event is called Pearl Jubilee. I know most of us might not know that, but let me formally welcome all of you to the Pearl Jubilee Lecture of Abia State's creation. 30 years in the life of any individual or organization is indeed a long time. For a man or woman, once you begin to attain the age of 30, society, particularly in these parts of the world, begins to expect that you should at least have started your own family. In effect, you should have become independent and strong enough to undertake life's arduous journey. Today, as we mark the 30 years of Abia State's creation, it is indeed a period for sober reflections on our journey so far. We have indeed made giant strides in different sectors of our socio-economic development efforts. Most of all, the relative peace we enjoy in the state today is a reflection of the governance structures built up over the years, as well as the premium placed on security of the people by the administrators of the state, and indeed the resolve of the people themselves to live in peace. Some of our neighbors have not been that fortunate. In Ebonyi State, for instance, we have had the perennial internecine clashes among brothers, as in the unending Ezza and Effium clashes in Ohuku, as well as the persistent Ikwo and Izi brother against brother clashes. In Imo State, management of the secessionist agitation has provoked a violent and widespread backlash in the southeast, as against a similar situation in Abia State, which presented itself in the form of a python dance, but for which deft security management strategies of the state government averted the carnage we are witnessing today across some southeast states. This is not to say it has all been rosy security-wise in Abia State. Time was when the OCC Kankus of this world held sway. But as it were, the state overcame. Again, thanks to the irrepressible spirit of the Abia people, who rallied all available sources, including their son, General Onyabo Azubike Hejirika, who held the reins in the Nigerian army and at the time to bring elements who had virtually crippled the state to their knees. As we celebrate 30 years of Abia, we thank God for having brought us this far. Indeed, we are God's own state. Otherwise, we would not have made the modest achievements we have recorded today if we had not overcome the various security challenges that dogged our path. Ask the governor of Borno State today. He will tell you that it will take 50 years to recover from the predicament Boko Haram has inflicted on that state. Only recently, the governor of Kaduna State had to withdraw his children from schools in that state on account of worsening insecurity. Of course, when a chief executive retreats, the common man is on his own. As soon as the president of Afghanistan abandoned ship recently, that was the end of the road for many in that beleaguered nation. On the African continent, the Somalians have birthed a failed state because of unending insecurity. Even the newly independent South Sudan finds itself in a situation where some analysts now posit that they were better off under a united Sudan than now that they seceded to form an independent country. That is debatable anyway. This is what happens when insecurity pervades the land. Developmental growth becomes stunted, and in the long run, social instability heightens, leading to eventual breakdown of law and order, and perhaps terrorism, insurgency, or even a full-blown war. It is against this backdrop that our lecture today, titled Insecurity as a Threat to Development, becomes most appropriate for this 30th anniversary celebration, as it will afford us the opportunity to properly appraise the worsening threat profile of the Nigerian state and to take immediate steps to avert the precarious future that beckons the developmental growth of the state should we fail to act now. Now let us take a critical look at the state of insecurity across Nigeria, because Abia is an integral part of the federation called Nigeria and therefore affected by developments in other parts of the country. There is no gainsaying the fact that never before in the history of this country had all parts of the country faced daunting security challenges all at the same time. Even during the war, it was mainly the East that felt the pangs of the war. Despite intermittent and isolated attacks in some parts of the country, the Boko Haram crisis at its peak between 2011 and 2014 was essentially a problem of the Northeast, even now. However, the situation today is different. Every geographical zone is beset by a peculiar security challenge, and everything is happening at the same time across the country. The country indeed is under siege. In the Northeast, there is insurgency and terrorism perpetrated by Boko Haram and ISWAP, that is the Islamic State in the West African province. The North Central is plagued by herdsmen farmers clashes. The Northwest is ravaged by kidnappings and banditry. The Southwest is contending with kidnappings, banditry, and secessionist agitation. The Southeast is faced with secessionist agitation, unknown gunmen, and kidnappings, while the South-South also has had its fair share, or has its fair share of kidnappings and lingering militancy. Now, from the foregoing, as the lawyers will say, res ipsa loquitur. The thing or fact speaks for itself. We must call a spade a spade. Nigeria, as it is today, is very insecure. Thanks to the social media, barely a day passes without reports and videos of road blockages by kidnappers, killings, bombings, community invasions, abduction of students in schools, and other blood-chilling crimes. In many parts of the country today, you cannot predict what fate will befall you once you step out of the house. When the Chibok girls were abducted in 2014, we thought we had seen the worst. However, bandits operating in the northwestern part of the country today have made child's play of the Chibok event. The Chibok girls kidnap case is one that I cannot forget easily, because it marked a turning point in my perception of the sincerity of foreign assistance in fighting insecurity. Whatever security challenges we face in the country today, we must fight and confront them ourselves. Nobody from outside will do it for us. Here was a case of harmless kids kidnapped for forced marriages to terrorists. The state of mind of the parents of those kids at that time, and indeed now, is better imagined. Of course, some of the parents died. Despite the global trauma provoked by this incident, so-called foreign governments that we went to for assistance chose to pay lip service with no concrete help. I say so as a key player at the time that event happened. We were collaborating with about 3 foreign countries that had set out to assist us to detect where these girls were taken to. But unfortunately, what they were giving to us were just things we could not use. So at some point, we had to invite a 4th country. And what that one saw what we had been given, they said, this is wickedness. They were giving us blood images of the Sambisa forest. And the 4th country said to us, look, those countries can see even a fly that passes through the Sambisa forest. So how come they are giving you these blood images? Well, that is what they gave to us, and at the end of the day, those girls just disappeared into thin air. But we thank God. God is on the throne, and He's seeing what everybody is doing. Now, as I look at the scenario playing out again today, I can only regret that we are yet to learn from our mistakes of the past. Our security focus is still directed at reactive measures rather than proactive ones. Intelligence gathering is key to any serious effort to contain our security challenges. Weapons alone cannot guarantee security. Yes, we have recently acquired 12 A-29 Super Tucano fighter aircraft at a whopping cost of $496 million or 255 billion naira from the US. They arrived last month, precisely on the 22nd of July, 2021. But ironically, just as the jets were coming in, a Nigerian Air Force jet piloted by Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo was shot down in Zamfara State by bandits. Earlier in February this year, an Air Force aircraft on a mission to rescue kidnapped school children in Niger State crashed in Abuja, killing all personnel on board. In April this year, an Alpha jet was shot down in Borno by suspected jihadists. The biggest shock was to come in May 2021 when the Chief of Army Staff was killed in a plane crash alongside 10 other military officers in Kaduna. Now, your guess is as good as mine as to how many millions of dollars are lost each time there is a plane crash. We are currently faced with an asymmetric warfare in which the criminals live anonymously in our midst and therefore difficult to detect. Only sound intelligence can detect them. Be they terrorists, insurgents, bandits, killer herdsmen, militants, unknown gunmen, rapists, etc. Big weapons and sophisticated bombers alone cannot detect them. Now, despite all the heavy weapons of war amassed by the Americans and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, not one was used. It took superior intelligence gathering by the American CIA to defeat and dismantle the Soviet Union. Current events unfolding in Afghanistan reveal that the US sunk in over $2 trillion in 20 years on that war. Yet, it could not defeat the will of the tribesmen commonly referred to as the Taliban. The state of insecurity in Nigeria today calls for serious reappraisal of our crime-fighting methods if we must avert the current threats posed to our collective developmental efforts. As it were, if we do not act now and allow criminal elements to continue to hold us to ransom, then our economic fortunes will continue to plummet and we'll find ourselves in a state far worse than it was before this, our present democratic experience. Only recently, former central bank governor and deposed Emir of Kano, Lamido Sanusi, while celebrating his 60th birthday on 15th of August 2021 in Kano, said that as a result of rising insecurity fueled by increasing poverty, high inflation, unemployment, increasing out of school children, etc., the average income of a Nigerian today is exactly what it was in 1980. In effect, no real progress in 40 years. Now, according to Robert McNamara, former U.S. Secretary of Defense, he said, and I quote, "Security means development. Security is not military hardware, though it may include it. Security is not military force, though it may involve it. Security is not traditional military activity, though it may encompass it. Security is development. Without development, there can be no security." Perhaps it is against this backdrop that the Nigerian Constitution provides in Chapter 2, Section 14, subsection 2b, that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. From my little research, Abia State government may have also been guided by the same postulations of McNamara on the imperative of development as the fulcrum for enhanced security. My findings reveal that the 5 cardinal pillars of the Abia State government are agricultural development, education, commerce and industry, oil and gas, and infrastructure. Again, emphasis here is on development. The import being that when there is development, the citizens are less restive and less likely to take to criminality. Conversely, where there is no development, insecurity heightens. Now, some effects of insecurity, you all know, include mistrust, fear, and anxiety. Loss of lives occur, loss of lives and property. There is deepening hunger, there is poverty, population displacement. People move from one part of the country to the other if their lives are threatened in a particular area. You have social and ethno-religious frictions or tensions across the country. There is flight of local and foreign investments. There is a disruption of business operations and outright closure of business enterprises. There is also increase in spending by private individuals and businesses. You find out that when there is insecurity, a lot of us have to make arrangements for our private security. But elsewhere in the world, it's not so. What causes this insecurity? We are not living in isolation in Abia State. We belong to a bigger Nigeria. Our borders, we are all aware, are very porous, particularly in the northern parts of the country. So you have a lot of illegal weapons coming into the country through those porous borders. Again, where government is unable to manage our diversity. Nigeria, they say, has over 300 or more ethnic groups. The words that come out of the mouth of our leaders, they need to be very careful because they can be interpreted from different angles and dimensions by the people. So when you are leading a country that is as diverse as Nigeria, you must be careful what you do and what you say. We have a lot of ethno-religious conflicts, like what we have in Plateau now, the Birom crisis and the Hausa Fulani over there. Struggle for political power. These are issues that create frictions and tensions in the country. For instance, 2023 is coming. And they say power is to rotate to the south. Now some people will say it has gone in the south, it has gone to the south west, it has gone to the south. Naturally, it should go to the southeast in 2023. But then politicians are not agreed on that. If issues like that are not handled properly, they could, snowball into uncontrollable frictions or even loss of lives. Back home here in Abia State, some of us are in Abuja, but we follow developments closely here. There's also the issue of who produces the governor in 2023. There's the issue of rotation. One group says it has gone to this group, it has gone to the other group. Now it's the turn of Abia North. And then even in Abia North, you still have the issue of equity. The Sukuato people say the acronym of the state, Abia, was formed by is ABIA. Every other person has had a turn. It is the turn of Isukuato to produce the next governor. So these are issues. If they are not properly handled, they could snowball into very serious political crisis. Issues of unemployment, low economic activity, these are things that create problems. When the security system is not properly funded, if the security agents are ill-equipped, then we can have crisis amongst us. Drug abuse. Our youth are getting involved in a lot of drug abuse. We must take steps to ensure that we control them, particularly the NDLEA and other aid security agencies. The social media, we must look at what we are reading. A lot of false information is going on there. If we don't control what we read in the social media, it could spark off unnecessary crisis. There are perceived inequalities in the system. Some people say they are being marginalized. These issues must be addressed. Then there's corruption in the system. Transparency International, for instance, says that we are 146 in 2019. By 2020, our position got worse. We even went to 149, despite all the efforts being made to fight corruption. Organized violent groups exist in the country. If we don't contain their activities, they continue creating problems. Where there are unfair court rulings, if the judiciary does not give rulings that reflect equity, natural justice, and good conscience, problems could arise therefrom. Then deployment of advanced technology in criminality. Our criminals are becoming more sophisticated. So if we don't equip our security agencies to be as sophisticated as them also, there could also be crisis in the country. Now let us look at some crime statistics across the world for us to know what is the situation of crime in this state, or for us to be able to compare. Now, like I said before, where there's insecurity, there can be no meaningful development. Now let us look at some key facts. Countries with the highest crime rates in the world include Venezuela, Papua New Guinea, South Africa, Afghanistan. Now if you look at these countries, apart from South Africa, that is developed, the rest are not. So where there's insecurity, you cannot have development. Now the most dangerous countries in the world, they are Afghanistan, Central African Republic, Iraq, Libya, Mali, Somalia, South Sudan, and Syria. Now, development in these countries have been seriously hampered as a result of recurrent killings and wars. The safest countries in the world are Iceland, New Zealand, Portugal, Austria, Denmark, and so on. If you look at those countries that are safe, you find out that development is high. There are some countries that have no armies because there is peace. Countries like Iceland, countries like Monaco. Monaco is in fact called the billionaire's paradise. Now, if we also look at the GDP of countries, or the GDP per capita, the GDP per capita of a country is the country's GDP divided by its population. Now, you find out that a lot of countries that are doing well, I looked at some countries, the first 10 of them there on the list, they are all well-developed countries. But those at the bottom are not developed. I mean, they have issues of development. If you look at some of the countries at the bottom, Nigeria, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Burundi, development is at its lowest. So it's important that will ensure or secure our state so that we can develop. Now, some African countries that have the highest levels, according to the highest levels of criminality, according to the Organized Crime Index of 2019, include Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, and a host of others. On a global scale, Nigeria is ranked third among the countries most affected by terrorism in the world. Afghanistan is number 1, number 2 is Iraq, number 3 is Nigeria. And if you look at these countries, because of insecurity in these countries, there is no meaningful development. In Abia State, like I said, we are in Nigeria and we are not insulated from the goings-on in the country. Available statistics indicate that Abia State, compared to a number of other states, is relatively peaceful despite intermittent violent onslaughts unleashed by criminal elements, thanks to a combination of deft and deliberate security strategies which have ensured relative peace. Only recently, when security challenges became overwhelming in some neighboring states, security watchers observed with keen interest the timely response of Abia State government, which, among others, imposed a strong curfew to checkmate any spillover. It paid off as several attempts to breach the peace were thwarted, and in no time, normalcy was restored. Little wonder, therefore, that the National Bureau of Statistics, in its report of 2020, rated Abia State as Nigeria's third most preferred investment destination among the 36 states and the FCT. Lagos was first, followed by the FCT, and then Abia. Available data indicated that implementation of economic policies favorable to development and a relatively stable security environment were key to the achievement of this feat. Nonetheless, a lot still needs to be done to translate these encouraging capital inflows into concrete, productive factors for the overall development of the state in a peaceful atmosphere. Sight is not lost of the fact that the state is still faced with a number of lingering security challenges, manifesting in the forms of kidnapping, cultism, armed robbery, herders-farmers clashes, border skirmishes, car snatching, chieftaincy tussles. We have pipeline vandalism to contend with in oil-bearing communities, secessionist agitation, and hijack of the agitation by criminals. Known and unknown gunmen still pervade the state. There are attacks on security formations, and we also record instances of release of detainees. Now, areas noted for some of these vices in the state include Aba North and South, Osisioma, Umuahia South, Umuahia North, and Ikuano, where activities of cultists remain worrisome. Kidnappings are still recurrent in Aba South, Aba North, Osisioma, Isialangwa North and South, Obingwa, Ugunagbo, and Isukuato. Zones of active secessionist agitation are found in Aba North and South, Osisioma, Obingwa, Ugunagbo, Umuahia North and South, Arochukwu and Ohafia. Then we still have the issue of herders, farmers, threats. They are prevalent in Ohafia, Bende, Isukuato again, Isialangwa North, Isialangwa South, Ugunagbo, Osisioma, and Arochukwu. Now, some recent casualties of the activities of these people include the attack on state headquarters, the Nigerian Immigration Service, the CID section of the Nigeria Police, and attacks on police divisions at Ubakala, Bende, Umuahia South, and a number of others. Thankfully, we do not have terrorism, we do not have insurgency here, and we pray it will never come here. Thankfully also, most of these vices that we have in the state appear recurrent in the same LGAs, making it easier to concentrate combat efforts and effectively manage security resources within specific geographical areas. Now, what must we do to ensure that our state remains relatively stable? Now, solutions to potential security threats to the development of Abia State must be homegrown, taking into account the peculiarities of the state. I took a liking to a quote from an ordinary Zambian citizen, Daniel Siwinga, and he said, as soon as we Africans have problems, we ask someone to take care of them for us. We ask the Europeans, we ask the Americans, we ask the Chinese. But he says, this is not development. We cannot develop when we begin to look for help from outside. We must do it ourselves with all sense of security. Now, security or no security, you cannot develop if you want to rely on outsiders. No foreign country will willingly transfer technology to you to develop. That is why third world or developing countries that have become developed today essentially had to steal technology. Those who come giving you all forms of assistance, if you look well, you find out that some of these gifts are Greek gifts. In the course of my public life, Henry Kissinger, for instance, former US Secretary of State, had even advocated that the black African population should be kept low so that the vast resources on the continent will not be depleted for the rest of the world. So there is a strategic plan that the black man's population should not grow because there are a lot of resources in this continent which the West depend on. So if you are allowed to grow so much and you take up all those resources, they will have a problem. So at times, that's why you have people coming up with all sorts of theories about corona. Sometimes they want to say it was targeted at Africans, but God, in his infinite mercy, took it away from us and took it elsewhere. In the course of my public life, I have seen that reliance on help from outside often attracts only half-hearted responses, particularly where the donor's interests are not favored. I'll give you an example. 1st October bombing in Abuja when we celebrated our 50th independence anniversary. Now, what had happened at that time was we were informed by a friendly country that there was going to be a bombing incident in Abuja. And we said, fine, let us work together to prevent it. We did everything. We were not giving full details. We were just giving half information. At the end of the day, that event at the Eagle Square, that particular country, their envoy did not attend. But they had information that this was going to happen, but they refused to share it properly for us to be able to protect our citizens. At the end of the day, we lost a lot of lives. Now, in 2015, some world powers had predicted that Nigeria would split. So they were working towards it. But then it took a Jonathan to avert that prediction. He said his political ambition was not worth the blood of any Nigerian. And that was what made the difference. Some agents had come into this country working hard to see that they actualized that mission. But somehow, while they were communicating among themselves, the Nigerian, security agencies were able to break into their communication and found out that they were indeed here to actualize a purpose. So a lot of times, one has had cause to feel really the insincerity of these countries that say they want to give us help. As stated earlier, Abia State is an integral part of Nigeria, and solutions to our problems of insecurity and development must be holistic, they must be homegrown. Of course, the security agencies operating in Abia State are federal organs, thus making it imperative for a strong synergy between them and the state government. if we must achieve desired peace and development. It is noteworthy that security agencies have been doing their best within available resources to keep all of us safe. And some of the methods they have adopted include arrests and prosecution of criminal elements, raids on the hideouts of criminals, gathering of proactive intelligence, sustained patrols by the Nigerian Army and other security agencies, engagement of the leadership of herders, farmers, and community heads to stem frictions. Similarly, the establishment of civil security outfits in the state like Abia Vigilante Service and Homeland Security Watch is a welcome initiative. They have been very effective in information and intelligence, providing intelligence on criminals, engagement of youths for empowerment programs, identification of black spots in the state and other flashpoints. They have been involved in patrol duties and as well as organizing security summits. Your Excellency, the Governor of Abia State, we have been discussing our topic here today before you came in, which is insecurity as a threat to development. Before you came, we had tried to do an overview of the security situation in the country, where we had mentioned that at this time, unlike ever before, that even during the Civil War, that when we have crises in the country, they are located to particular political zones, geographic zones. But this time, every geographic zone is facing one peculiar security crisis. Now we have looked at what is recurrent in the northeast, where we have Boko Haram and ISWAP. We have looked at the northwest, where we have kidnappings and banditry. The north central, where we have Fulani herdsmen and farmers' clashes. In the southeast, we have looked at secessionist agitations. We have looked at kidnappings and all sorts of negative vices. Similarly, in the southwest, we still have incidents of kidnapping and secessionist agitation. We also have, in the south-south, they are also faced with lingering cases of militancy and kidnapping. So every part of the country is faced with one vice or the other at this time. We have also looked at measures being taken to ensure that we contain some of these problems. Now, when in 2011, terrorists were having a field day bombing Nigerian cities, they succeeded largely because nation's security apparatus lacked technical capacity to geolocate communications of these terrorists. It took extra budgetary provisions by the government to acquire requisite equipment for the security agencies to track them. The acquisition of this equipment, which some foreign security experts describe as the game changer, forced the terrorists to abandon most Nigerian cities and retreat to the forests in the northeast. Now these criminals have expanded their zones of operation. It is only apparent that they have overwhelmed whatever technology or resources we are currently deploying to fight them. We are aware that some of these bandits now use drones to detect security agents on their trail, when unfortunately the security agents themselves may not have been provided these drones. As stated earlier, security measures for effective containment of security challenges in the state must involve federal and state organs alike. Accordingly, We must address such issues as porous borders, proliferation of illegal arms and ammunition. Entry points into the state should be well manned by security operatives. There must be creation of environment for enhanced economic activities. We must establish industrial clusters and initiate productive agricultural schemes. Well, I listened to the speech of the governor this morning, and I noted that efforts were being made towards the industrialization of the state, which I deem commendable. We must scrutinize the nature of foreign assistance offered by supposed friendly nations. We must also create an effective and workable economic programs for the youth to tackle unemployment. We must provide infrastructure, roads, power, water, and drainages to avert floods and erosion. There must be regular and sustained logistic support for security agencies. Civil security organizations in the state, be they Abia Vigilante, Home Security, Forest Guard, or Bubago, should also be well remunerated and be commanded by experienced security veterans. There must be proper coordination and supervision of the activities of community vigilantes across the state by the police and other security agencies. It is important that our various communities are encouraged to set up vigilantes to assist the security agencies. There must be enhanced technological support for security operations, including communication equipment, software for fighting cybercrime, drones, vehicles, etc. We must also involve stakeholders across political lines in the security of the state. It is noteworthy that Abia State government organized a security summit involving an array of security chiefs who are indigenes of the state on 28th May 2029. This is indeed commendable. But again, there must be implementation of the resolutions of these security summits. There must be intensive intelligence gathering to detect early indicators of potential spillover of security threats prevalent in other parts of the state. That is why from time to time at checkpoints where they see large numbers of people coming in trucks, they are intercepted. You don't wait until problems begin to occur before you fight them. There must also be good governance and welfare for the workforce, as that will lessen areas of restiveness. We must also profile groups that are easily infiltrated by criminals, like traders in some markets. They are infiltrated by criminals to perpetrate crimes. Members of transport unions, and even the security agencies. It's important that we continuously profile those we rely on so as to be able to detect moles among them. The operations of civil security organizations should be backed by appropriate legislation to avoid conflict with federal security agencies. We must also support ongoing demands for restructuring of the country to address perceived injustices which are heightening ethnic suspicions and heating up the polity. Now, secessionist agitators point to wanton killings by headsmen, among others, as reason for their agitation. We must look at this critically. The Global Terrorism Index ranks headsmen as the 5th most dangerous terrorist group in the world after ISIS, the Taliban, Al-Shabaab, and Boko Haram. The traditional institution, town unions, religious bodies should also be effectively engaged in the security of the state. The state should also support initiatives for community policing and state police. The state government already has a security trust fund it is important that the fund is effectively managed to assist security operations in the state. We should also reinvigorate and restore confidence in the Southeast Security Committee, SESCOM, set up by the Southeast Governors Forum to fight insecurity in the zone, but whose chairman, General Umuahia, resigned recently. There is indeed need for a strong security platform to coordinate civil security operations in the Southeast. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me end this discourse with another quote from Robert McNamara. He was a distinguished World War II veteran in the U.S. Army, where he attained the rank of a colonel. He later became president of Ford Motor Company, later U.S. Defense Secretary, and eventually president of the World Bank. His military background, his education at Harvard, and his leadership of the World Bank for over a decade, 13 years in fact, eminently qualify him to speak as an authority on security and development. He said, and I quote, "Security involves not only protection of the territorial integrity of a state, but upholding and enhancing the well-being of the people coming within the jurisdiction of a state." Thank you very much for listening.